Winter night in Stockholm. Detective Eric Johansson sat in his office, surrounded by stacks of files and photos of crimes that had plagued him relentlessly for years. From outside the window came the pale yellow light of street lamps reflecting on the snow that slowly covered the city. Noiselessly, the door opened and in front of Eric's desk stood Emma Lundgren, an investigative journalist with tightly tied hair and a tired look. "Detective Johansson, I have information about a murder that may be related to one of your unsolved cases," Emma said, watching Eric's reaction. The man lifted his gaze from the photo he was holding in his hand and measured her with a penetrating gaze. "Where did you get this information, Ms. Lundgren?" he asked, although deep down he felt that there was something disturbing in those words. Emma extracted an envelope from her bag, from which she slid out several photographs. "I found these during my last investigation," she said, presenting the photos to him. Eric looked at them carefully, and his heart began to beat faster. The photos showed the body of a young woman he had once encountered. A symbol from the past. Together, they went to the scene of the crime. The snow creaked under their boots, and the cold air steamed in their nostrils. On the spot, covered with a white coat, lay the body of Nina Anderson. Eric approached it cautiously, checking his surroundings with his icy eyes. "See?" Emma said, revealing a mysterious symbol carved on the dead girl's skin. Eric looked at it closely and felt his past come back with redoubled force. The same symbol had been used by the murderer he had tracked years ago. Anxiety was clearly painted on his face. "I have to report this," he said, reaching for the radio station. However, Emma grabbed his hand and looked him straight in the eye. "Detective, we can't report it," she said firmly. "We have to get to the truth ourselves." "You're right," Eric replied, though he felt he was breaking the rules. But he was willing to do anything to unravel the mystery and not let another innocent person lose his life. "Let's investigate this together," he added. Together they proceeded to investigate in the open air of Stockholm, where bloody mysteries were emerging from under the winter whiteness. They knew they were entering dangerous territory, but their determination and desire for justice drove them forward, regardless of the consequences. Forbidden investigation. Sitting in a small cafe near the crime scene, Eric and Emma were looking through photos related to the mysterious symbol. The owner of the establishment, an elderly lady with gray hair, served them hot drinks, not realizing that the couple was engaged in gathering information on a murky subject. "I discovered something," said Eric, leaning toward Emma. "This symbol seems to be linked to a cult that was active here decades ago." His face took on an expression of determination, and his eyes shone with concern. "This must be the key to solving this case," he said. "How do you want to investigate it?" Emma asked, equally determined, though her inner demons still troubled her. She felt she could trust Eric, but she was never sure she could rebuild her life after the tragedy that had befallen her. "We need help," Eric replied, already contemplating his next step. Reporting the matter to his superiors was out of the question. He knew that his working methods were not getting universal recognition. "I know someone," Emma said. "Lars Henriksen, a local police officer, can help us. He has a contact with a computer scientist who is a specialist in data analysis." "Contact them," said Eric, while his thoughts revolved around the symbol and the murderer. He knew their time was short. "That's right," Lars said over the phone. "The data is already being sent by our IT specialist. But be careful, because news of your investigation is spreading throughout the police station. Someone is watching us," whispered Eric to Emma, as they met with the IT specialist. The woman, dressed in a black hooded sweatshirt and glasses, was showing them the results of her work on a laptop screen. "Here's what I discovered," the IT specialist began. "This symbol has appeared on many crime scenes, but no one has been able to decipher it. Until now." Her face was as pale as the snow outside the window, and her hands trembled slightly. "There's one more thing," she added. "I discovered that one of the police officers from your precinct is in contact with Gustav Holm, who is involved in these cases." "How is that possible?" exploded Eric, sensing that the betrayal and conspiracy went deeper than he thought. Emma, worried, looked at him with concern. "We have to be careful," she said. "We don't yet know who our enemy is." "That's right," Eric admitted, his thoughts intertwining with feelings of anger and determination. "But first of all, we have to get this murderer," he added, looking at the door of the cafe behind which the next part of the investigation awaited them. "Let this building be our guide." Eric pointed to an old abandoned factory that looked like a bad dream against the gray sky. "This could be the murderer's hideout," he added, feeling the frightening excitement of discovering secrets related to an ancient cult. "Are you sure?" Emma looked at him with concern, seeing that his face had taken on an expression filled with uncertainty and fear. She knew him well, and knew that something deeply troubled him. "We'll have to see," Eric replied, opening the car door and stepping outside. The wind was blowing hard, and the chill penetrated to the bone. He suggested to Emmy that she stay in the car, but she firmly refused, following him into the depths of the abandoned factory. "Be careful," Eric warned her as they entered the second floor of the building, trying to avoid the limp floorboards. He watched her with concern, seeing her determination and willpower, which always amazed him. "Look!" Emma suddenly stopped, discovering a strange symbol painted on the wall. Eric moved closer to it, feeling his heart begin to beat harder. It was the same symbol they had seen on Nina Anderson's body. "We are inside a cult," howled Eric as they entered the farther part of the building, encountering even more symbols and frightening images. There was a disturbing smell everywhere, as if death was a constant presence here. "We have to be careful," whispered Emma, as they explored more rooms that seemed to be ritual meeting places for the murderer and his accomplices. "We don't know what awaits us," she added, trying to keep her voice calm. "You're right," nodded Eric, and his thoughts drifted back to the past, when he had tried to unravel the mystery. Now everything was starting to fall into place, and he felt that he was getting closer to solving this macabre case. At this point, Gustav Holm began to act and decided to attack the detectives and their loved ones. It began with an anonymous phone call to Emma, informing her that her family was in danger. Then Eric received a message that his former partner had been murdered. "What should we do?" Clearly confused, Emma looked at Eric, who was trying to understand the extent of Gustav Holm's influence. They knew they were facing personal choices that could affect the fate of their investigation and the lives of their loved ones. "We must continue," Eric said, although he felt his heart was full of doubt and pain. "We can't let this monster control our lives," he added, seeing in Emma's eyes the same feeling of determination that inspires him so much. "That's right," nodded Emma, preparing to continue exploring the mysterious interior of the abandoned factory. They knew they would come face to face with a fearsome adversary, but they were also confident that together they were stronger than the fear and evil trying to overcome them. In the light of the pale moon that broke through the dusty windows of the abandoned factory, Eric and Emma examined rows of old documents. Among them, they found a photo of Gustav Holm with a young, lovely woman with blonde hair, Nina Andersson. On the reverse side of the photo was a manuscript note. "Nina and her father, together forever." "Roger," Eric said, closing his eyes for a moment, trying to embrace the thoughts that suddenly flooded his mind. "Gustav Holm is Nina Andersson's father," he added, looking at Emma's bewildered face. "What? That's impossible," replied Emma, unable to believe the words. "Then why did he participate in these cruel rituals? Why did he want to kill his own daughter?" "Perhaps the father's feelings lost out to his lust for revenge," Eric replied, looking deeply into Emma's eyes. "Perhaps he wanted to bring the cult back to life to destroy everything I brought to light," he added, feeling an inner tremor as he realized the potential threat from Gustav. "We must act immediately," Emma said, pulling out her cell phone. "I'll call Lars to—" She didn't finish her sentence when the moonlight suddenly went out. "What's going on?" Eric asked, feeling sudden anxiety. "I stayed," replied a deep, dark voice behind them. As the detectives' eyes became accustomed to the darkness, they noticed silhouettes of people surrounding them on all sides. "Gustav's followers," whispered Eric, cursing himself in his mind for the mistake and negligence that had led them into this trap. "You can't escape," announced one of the followers, coming closer. You will participate in our ritual finale, he added with satisfaction. We won't let you, replied Eric with determination, trying to slip away, but his confused reaction was quickly thwarted by a pair of hands grabbing him. It's too late, said another follower, pinning Eric's wrists with handcuffs. The fate is already sealed, he added as Emma was also overpowered. No, flashed through Emma's mind, as she felt panicky fear begin to overwhelm her. We have to find a way, she repeated in her mind, gathering her strength for the final battle against the enemies who had decided to use them for their dark purpose. We have to get out of here, whispered Eric, dragging his hand towards Emma with determination. To the beat of their hearts, both of them could hear the crackling fire that consumed the building in which they were trapped by Gustav's followers. Emma, with tears in her eyes and her hand squeezing Eric's hand, held her breath before breaking out in desperation. But how? She replied, trying to hide her fear as the flames surrounded them more and more. Over there, Eric said, pointing to a window on the second floor. We have to jump, he added anxiously. Fire was everywhere, and time was running out. The thought of confronting Gustav gave them the strength to fight for survival. We'll do it, Emma said, facing her fears. The two of them moved toward the window, trying to avoid the burning parts of the building that fell to the floor. Ready? Eric asked and looked at Emma, who nodded. A look of temporary relief appeared on his face. Together they stood at the threshold of a crucial decision. They jumped. The fall was terrifying, but landing on soft snow saved their lives. Emma's breath trembled from the cold and fear as she rose from the ground. Eric, with pain in his legs from the jump, helped her to her feet. We have to act quickly, Eric said, forcing himself to ignore his own wounds. Gustav must be stopped, he added, looking at the burning building. Only the thought of confronting Gustav kept them moving. That's right, Emma said, nodding vigorously. We can't let any more people get hurt, she added, remembering Nina Anderson and those who died by the cult's paws. There it is, Eric said, pointing to the silhouette of Gustav standing nearby. Your time has come, Eric shouted, moving toward Gustav with a determination he had never felt before. There you are, Gustav replied, smiling sadistically. I thought the fire would defeat you, he added, glancing at the detectives with disdain. Not so easy, chuckled Eric, and without hesitation threw himself at Gustav, overpowering him. It's over, he announced as Emma handcuffed him. Gustav's apprehension was a victory, but Eric and Emma knew it wasn't the end. They considered the complexity of the case and the consequences for Swedish society, realizing that their fight for justice would continue. What now? Asked Emma, looking at Eric, who had determination and sadness in his eyes at the same time. We go on, Eric replied, squeezing her hand. Together, he added. And the epilogue of their story showed their lasting bond and continued search for justice.